Thanks for joining us today. I'm Colion Noir, and this is CN Live. First up today, there's a new shooting experience that combines paintball and MMA fighting. It uses real guns and near-real ammo. Check it out.
Gunfighters, prepare to defend yourselves! Everything operates the exact same way as a real gun because it is a real gun.
We're joined live now by the CEO of Las Vegas Gunfights, Nephi Olivia. I butchered that, didn't I?
You did. You butchered my name, but you got my first name right, which is usually the hard one.
Sorry about that, man. Sorry about that. Okay, so how do you say your last name?
Nephi Oliva.
Oliva. Okay, gotcha. I tried to call you Olivia. I'm sorry.
Next thing we'll be singing Grease.
Pretty much, holding hands, running through open fields, and So, I very vividly recall doing my first Simunitions training. I did it on an episode of my show Noir. I think we actually have a clip of that.
Are we gonna watch it?
Yeah, we're watching it right now. And so I remember doing this for the very first time, and I really didn't know what I was getting into. It was the first time I've ever heard of Simunitions, and we were kind of setting up a scenario where I was in bed and acting as if somebody were to come into my house, and I had my gun on a nightstand, so forth and so on. And it was, for lack of a better word, exhilarating, simply because, like, I just remember having a severe adrenal dump. Unlike anything I've ever experienced. Not even doing paintball or anything like that. This was on a whole nother level. So tell people out there and talk to me about what is Gunfights? What is this about?
Well, the concept for us is called entertainment. And that is, if you're trying to make a more engaging medium for training, it's always the things that are more exciting and fun. It's always the teachers that have personalities.
Yeah.
If you were to practice scales on a piano and you just did your little do, re, mi's all up and down the piano, you could probably do that for about 10 minutes before you were going to off yourself. But if you put a blues track in the key of C and you practice your scales improvising, you could be there 10, 12 hours and you would never get bored. And so the idea was to take some of the very structured, mundane, repetitive training regimens and create more of a chaotic situation. Mm-hmm. There's a million scenarios you can go through and not cover them all. But chaos is more apt at preparing you for the unforeseen scenarios because it teaches you to think critically on the move.
Yeah.
So we wanted to create a sport that was able to deliver that. But the other part of it is I was looking at the firearms training. I'm an ex-bounty hunter. Uh-huh. And so we were responsible for our own training. And I didn't find it to be adequate. Martial arts, if you want to learn to fight, you have your mental training, you have your drills, and then you spar. That's how you learn to fight. Well, firearms and gunfighting is mental training, drills, here's your badge and gun, good luck. Where's the
sparring? Yeah.
So that's essentially what we're developing, and we've had tremendous response from people that have zero experience who were otherwise intimidated by guns.
Yeah.
Now find a less intimidating way to experiencing a firearm in a safe 360 environment. And then we've got, I can't talk about some of the people that are coming in here. You're going to see about it again on Fox News in the next couple of weeks. But we have tier 1 guys that are coming in here, and they are absolutely tearing this place up.
I call that cheating. No, man. So, I mean, I like... I love the idea. I love the fact that you approach it almost like a sport. Like, not almost, you do. You approach it like a sport. The same way that, a lot of people approach martial arts like a sport, MMA, all of those things. And you're right. I think one of the biggest missing components when it comes to the idea of using a gun for whether it be self-defense, protection, whatever the case, is that sparring component, that real world, okay, outside of the controlled environment, this is it. You are in it. figure your way out of it using all the training and all the practice that you've done before, and then being able to live to see the next day so you can learn from the mistakes that you made, so that when it does ever happen in the real world, if it ever happens, you're in a much better position to kind of deal with that situation. Because I think for a lot of people, the overwhelming aspect of it is the shock and trying to figure out, okay, what do I do in a real life scenario? You know, and it's really hard to kind of mimic the inherent fear that comes with having to use a gun to defend yourself from a practice standpoint. You know what I mean? It's like when you're practicing, you know you're not going to die. So it's like, how do you create that level of tension? How do you create that adrenaline that puts you in that fight or flight moment and allow you to kind of think through that process? And so I think this is freaking cool, actually.
There's a lot of things that happened in developing the sport that were intentional, that I'll happy to take credit for, and then there's things that happened accidentally. The MMA element actually came as a happy mistake because we didn't realize we wanted to force the action, so we built a 30 by 50 arena. But what you don't realize is in that close proximity where most firearm exchanges happen, you can't help but get in a fight.
Yeah.
So we were running it, and fights were breaking out. Even amongst friends, you know, it wasn't hostility, but they were so in the adrenaline, they were in the moment, and they just naturally happened. So there's been some adjustments in the rules and how that functions. Officially, fighting is not allowed in the sport. Neither is fighting allowed in hockey.
And I was just about to say that.
But you know, it's a very, very high adrenaline sport, and guys, you know, are in it, and so it sometimes happens. And of course, we keep the cameras rolling when it does. But the objective in that sense is to constantly get back to your weapon system. Even if you have someone on top of you, try to get back to your weapon, tie up their weapon, so that you can score the appropriate points. It's very physically demanding as well. 3-minute rounds.
You're done.
Insane.
I'll never forget that day, because I remember literally after doing, I think I did technically what would be considered 2 rounds, probably not even as extensive as this. And I remember that day, just the adrenal fatigue. Like I tried to go back to work, and it just was not happening. Like I had to go home and take a quick nap, because it was your body, like that adrenaline dump is real. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that this isn't paintball. This is these ammunition rounds they hurt.
Yeah, they definitely hurt, but there is a certain psychology behind the sport, because you've been told your whole life, if you work around firearms, about pointing them at people.
Yeah.
The number one inhibitor of effective firearms training is safety. And if you go to a range, it's all about safety.
Yeah.
Point it at the ground, point it down range, don't point it at a person, don't muzzle anybody, you know, trigger discipline. That's all you hear about a ranger: safety, 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 safety.
Yeah.
But that's not how you learn to fight.
Yeah.
By being safe. So we love Simunition in that way, because it gives us a way to be unsafe while we train.
Safely.
The athleticism possible with, you know, football players throwing, you know, 60-yard passes at a moving target, basketball players arcing a shot into the hoop from the 3-point line. Humans are capable of amazing athletic things. That hasn't translated into the firearms industry, because safety is inhibiting that.
Yeah.
If you were to do a backflip on a motorcycle, you got to practice over a foam pit. You stick the landing 100 times, and then you can take the foam out and do it in front of your mom. We need to take the foam pit and put it in the firearms industry so you can stick the landing. Then when you introduce lethal again, you'll have the ability to pull that off safely.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that the sport is unlocking for people, is the tactical athleticism that can go into gunfighting and absolutely overwhelm and dominate any opposition that might present itself.
So what typically are people's experience like? What are people's reactions like? People who've never really. First of all, do you get a large number of people who come in who've never actually fired a gun before?
We do actually get a lot of people from foreign countries because we're in Vegas that want to experience that. But you're looking at what's the alternative? You go to a gun range and you shoot full auto for 13 seconds for $300, and all you did was put a bunch of holes in a piece of paper. This is a very dynamic experience, whether we're doing force on target with three-dimensional mannequins, force on blank, where we're coming at you with blanks and you coming at us with sims, or a full force-on-force gunfight experience. We take them through the progression. If they start off new, we can take them through instructions, and they're much more amenable to instruction because they know that what they're holding isn't going to accidentally kill someone or themselves. Gotcha. So they're a better student. Then you can graduate them up to different levels. I keep thinking back to the case in Arizona where that little girl, who is probably still traumatized to this day and will be for life, of an instructor giving her a full auto machine gun, and knowing it rides up, lets her test one test fire, and should have kept that hand over because he knows that's going to happen. And unfortunately, the right person lost their life in that encounter. If it had been that little girl, it would just be
it'd be unspeakable. At that point,
you can go full auto with sims. There's no need to have lethal rounds. You should be storing your ammo and practicing with Simunition.
I'm pretty sure some people would fight that idea, but I do see where you're coming from in that sense. I think that comes, I honestly think Simunition should be more readily accessible to tons of people, and I think it would do this country a lot of good, actually, because I do agree with the idea of it putting a lot of people in a position to be better trained and responsible gun owners. But go ahead.
It's interesting that you say that because people have asked us how Simunition gave us access to a restricted use product. We have the only civilian distributorship that Simunition has ever given anyone, and it was because the concept of entertainment, that it was not quite so far off the base to be outside their wheelhouse, but it also, they feel the same way about Simunition, but you don't want that product to be out there for people to be playing with in their backyards, because it is still discharging a firearm.
Yeah.
So it needs to be in a controlled setting, and this is a controlled setting. We're setting up affiliates all over the country. We had over 30 applications in the last week for people. Gun ranges where you're going to have are going to start adding arenas. They're going to start moving away from linear targets. They're going to start having instructors become coaches for the sport. Paintball ranges are going to start adding a field for Simunition play. This is the start of a new industry, and people have said this is the next UFC. We'll see, but there's definitely a massive base. There's no context for selling firearms. It's in a glass case, or it's in your house or in your truck. The context of a firearm is how it was purchased for an intent to use it in self-defense, especially a handgun.
Absolutely.
But there's no context to show how they perform. You have a car in your garage that never leaves. It runs great, but you can't leave your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Simunition gives it the ability to do that, and the response has just been tremendous.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I really look forward to seeing where this goes in the future. I'm actually planning. I need to make a trip out there and see how it goes down for myself. But I really
bring the cameras. I'll take you on.
Absolutely, I'm going to figure out a way to make that work. But really appreciate it, man. I look forward to getting out there and running some sims. I'm pretty sure I'll need a bed. I'll need to take a nap after the fact as well, because that adrenal dump is real. But appreciate it, man. You have a good one.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right. And we'll be back.